Before we begin, imagine this. You wake in the early dawn to a cold so sharp it burns your lungs. The river outside your camp has frozen overnight. Even though winter shouldn't have arrived for another month, the wind has changed, the sky has changed, and suddenly, every choice your family makes is a matter of survival. Tonight's story begins in a moment, just like that. Welcome, dear travelers of time, and thank you for joining the Go-To Sleep Historian once again. Tonight, I invite you into a world far older than our cities, our clocks, or our comforts, a world where winter was not just a season, but a living force with a will of its own. A world where families depended on preparation, unity, and wisdom passed down through generations to survive cold that could freeze rivers solid, winds strong enough to cut through layers of fur, and storms that arrived without warning. This is the story of one such winter, one of the earliest and harshest their people had ever known. And at the heart of it, we follow a young boy learning what it truly means to protect his family, respect the land, and step into the responsibilities carried by those who came before him. If you enjoy stepping quietly into the past, if relaxing, slow-paced storytelling helps you settle into rest, or if you simply love understanding how real people lived, endured, and thrived in the world long before ours, then I warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps this calm, peaceful corner of YouTube grow, and ensures you never miss another quiet journey into history. Thank you for being here. Now, settle in, find a comfortable place to rest, and let the noise of the day fade softly into the background. The story will begin in just a few moments, and the gentle music will return once our tale comes to a close. Enjoy tonight's journey. The cold always announces itself quietly, never with thunder, never with warning. It arrives like a breath held too long by the sky, then released all at once. Tonight, that breath descends upon the northern plains. Silent Hawk wakes before dawn, though wakes is too gentle a word. He jerks back into consciousness with a sharp, sudden awareness that the air inside the family lodge has changed. It has thickened, sharpened, turned into something that bites the inside of his nose with every inhale. For a moment he lies still beneath the layers of deer hide and bison robes, listening. The fire has died. That is the first thing he notices. The second is that the cold replacing it is not the calm cold of late autumn. This is a predatory cold. It slinks between the wooden ribs of the lodge, curls beneath sleeping furs, sinks its teeth into bare skin wherever it can reach. Silent Hawk draws his shoulders inward on instinct, shrinking from the invisible force that now fills the room. His little brother, Willow Cricket, sleeps beside him, small as a curled-up fox kit. Cricket's breath makes tiny, ghostly clouds in the dimness. Wheats H1. Silent Hawk can see the trembling of the boy's lips. Evanine, sleep the cold, has found him. Silent Hawk shifts carefully so as not to wake him, but a soft groan escapes the younger child anyway. Outside, the wind begins to rise, not gradually, but like something heavy has been dropped onto the world. The hide walls of the Lodge Shiva. A low hum builds across the plain, threading itself through every tree, every lodge, every sleeping person. Silent Hawk's eyes adjust, and he sees grandmother's shape moving near the fire pit. Her silhouette is unmistakable. Small, slightly bent, wrapped in a robe of old white wolf fur. She moves with no hesitation. Even though the coals are barely glowing, her hands are already working, feeding slivers of dried willow bark into the embers. You're awake, she whispers, not turning. Silent Hawk sits up, pulling the heavy hide around his shoulders. The cold came too fast. Grandmother nods once, the lines of her face etched deeper by the faint ember light. It came hungry, she says. Silent Hawk looks toward the hide flap serving as the lodge's door. Frost has formed around its edges, creeping inward like tiny crystalline claws. He reaches toward it, then withdraws, even at a distance. The air spilling through that seam stings his fingertips. A cough sounds across the room, the deep, steady cough of their father, Stonetail, who's risen as well. He sits on his sleeping mat, pulling on his thick leggings, movements measured and practiced. Winter was supposed to wait. Silent Hawk murmurs. His father stands, the top of his bison hide robe brushing the low rafters. Winter never waits, he replies. Only we do. He steps beside grandmother, kneels, and helps coax the small fire back to life. The embers glow, resist, then flare weakly. A thin ribbon of warmth crawls across the floor, barely enough to feel unless you're sitting right beside it. Mother wakes next, pressing a hand against her lips to keep in a groan. She roozes without complaint, though Silent Hawk can see the stiffness in her joints. She moves to Willow Cricket, gathering the boy into her arms and pulling him close to her chest. Even half asleep, Cricket clings to her like a cold little sparrow. Then the lodge door flap pushes inward. A violent burst of wind slams into the room. The fire almost dies again. Snow whips through the opening sharp. Dry snow that falls like thrown sand. Father lunges, grabbing the flap and pulling it shut with a grunt. For a heartbeat, everyone in the lodge stands still, catching their breath. Silent Hawk had seen cold mornings, but never. This, a storm arriving with no sound of approach. Snow without clouds. Wind without warning. Grandmother feels the air with the flat of her palm. Then she closes her eyes. This is not autumn cold, she murmurs. This is winter's true breath. It's early. Far too early. Mother looks toward her. Has this happened before? Grandmother nods, thin lips tightening. Once, when I was nearly his age. She gestures to Silent Hawk. The winter that swallowed 3 villages before the first moon reached full. The room feels smaller suddenly, less like a home, more like a shelter under siege. Father straightens, the firelight shining in the frost forming along the edges of his hair. We'll need to check the lodge walls. The winds are wrung coming from the northwest. He looks toward the door again. Storm winds. Silent Hawk pulls his furs tighter around him. He wants to ask the questions, bubbling in his chest. Will the storm last? Is the food enough? Will the migration come early? But his father is already planning, already strapping on his outer robe. Silent Hawk, father says, without turning, stay near the fire. Keep your brother warm. But I can help. Silent Hawk protests softly. Grandmother smiles from the shadow, soft, but tired. You will, she says, but every winter morning begins with one simple task. Protect the young ones first. Silent Hawk nods, ashamed but obedient. He settles beside his sleeping brother, pulling the heavy buffalo robe over both of them. The fire cracks weakly, reflecting in tiny sparks in Cricket's half-open eyes. Cricket whispers, voice trembling. Is it winter already? Silent Hawk wraps an arm around him. Just a cold morning, Elias? Gently? Outside, the wind punches the lodge again. Not brushes. The hides strained against their bindings. Ice crystals dance across the interior walls as if alive. Silent Hawk feels the cold creeping through the soles of his moccasins, despite the thick, woven grass underneath. He looks toward grandmother, whose gaze is fixed on the smoke hole above. The spirits are telling us to prepare, she says. Nothing comes this fiercely, unless the season ahead is a hard one. Silent Hawk swallows. In his chest, something both heavy and determined begins to form. A realization. This winter will test them. Not someday, not weeks from now. Tonight. This morning. Now. Outside, the wind roars louder, so loud that the trees groan like old bones. But inside the lodge, the family gathers close, drawing strength from one another. From the fire, from the walls crafted by ancestors who survived winters far worse. Silent Hawk holds his brother tighter, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders in a way it never had before. The cold has arrived early, and winter has only just begun. The first full light of morning creeps through the cracks of the lodge, turning the thin frost on the hide walls a pale silver. The fire has recovered enough to spread a faint warmth through the room, but not much. Silent Hawk sits beside it, slowly rubbing life back into his hands while Willow Cricket leans against him, still half asleep. Father, already dressed in his outer robe, checks the lodge walls for weak points. He presses on the seams, where snow had forced its way through earlier, feeling for cold drafts. Each time he finds one, he marks the spot with a small charcoal line. Mother organizes the sleeping furs, shaking the frost from the edges and folding them neatly. She moves quietly, not expressing fear or annoyance. She accepts mornings like this, the same way she accepts cooking, sewing, or carrying water simply part of what must be done. Grandmother sits closest to the fire pit. She has a small pouch of dried willow bark in her lap and stirs a pot of snowmelt over the low flames. Her hands move with steady purpose. Silent Hawk looks around the lodge. The structure is strong wooden poles, bound tightly at the top, hide walls stretched around the frame and pinned to the earth. Inside, a second layer of hide hangs a little off the ground, forming a thin air space between the inner and outer walls. It's something he grew up with, but this morning, he studies it more carefully. Last night, he had felt the cold trying to push inside. This morning, he sees how the lodge fought back. The inner lining kept wind from rushing directly into the living space. The outer hide blocked moisture. The smoke hole above carried the warm air upward and out. Everything had a purpose. He just never paid attention until now. Father finishes marking weak spots in the walls and turns to the family. This cold is not passing quickly, he says. We need to strengthen the lodge. We'll start today. Grandmother gives a short nod. It will take the whole family. Silent Hawk straightens. What can I do? Father looks at him for a moment, as if deciding. You'll help me outside, but not until after we warm ourselves properly. Grandmother hands Silent Hawk a wooden cup. It's filled with willow bark tea. It smells bitter, and it tastes even worse. But she insists it keeps the body steady in cold weather. Drink, she says. It wakes the blood. Silent Hawk forces it down in a few gulps. Willow Cricket crawls closer to the fire, rubbing his arms. Why is it this cold already? I see. Grandmother doesn't sugarcoat her answer. The seasons shift as they choose. We follow, or we pay the price. Mother places a thick hide around Cricket's shoulders. Don't worry. We will stay warm if we work together. Cricket nods, though he still looks uncertain. Father begins listing tasks. Silent Hawk, you come with me. We need to check the outside walls for damage. He turns to Mother. You and Willow Cricket check our food bundles. If the freeze reached any of the dried meat, it might crack. We don't want spoilage. Mother nods and begins organizing the storage pouch. And you? Father says to Grandmother, tell us if we need more grass for insulation. Grandmother lifts her eyebrow. We need more. We always need more. Silent Hawk pulls on his moccasins and outer leggings. The cold air inside the lodge has already stiffened him a little. He fastens his heavier shirt at the neck and grabs his gloves from their hook. When he steps outside, the cold hits instantly. It feels sharper than before, so sharp it stings his eyes. The sky is clear now, pale and washed out. Snow dusts the ground like fine powder. The trees beyond the village looked frozen in place, their branches stiff and white-edged. Father stands a few steps ahead, studying the lodge exterior. This is winter cold, he says. Not full, not full, not full, not wind chill. Winter. Silent Hawk looks across the settlement. Other families are already outside, inspecting their own lodges, stamping the ground, talking quietly. Everyone recognizes what this early cold means. Preparation must start sooner than expected. Father places Silent Hawk's hand on the lodge's outer wall. Feel this. Silent Hawk touches the hide. It's rigid from the night's freeze. The cold sinks directly into his fingertips. Now look here, Father says, pointing at small gaps where the hide is pulled away from the stakes. These spots will let the wind in if we don't fix them. Silent Hawk nods. We'll reinforce the bottom edge with more earth later, Father continues. But right now, we tighten the hide and repin the loose spots. They work side by side. Father hands him wooden stakes' sharpened points. Silent Hawk pushes them into the hardened ground, forcing the hide tight again. The work is simple but tiring. The cold makes each movement slower. Father checks the smoke hole flaps next. When the wind comes from the northwest like this, we adjust these. He uses a long pole to lower the right flap slightly. This keeps the fire breathing properly. Silent Hawk studies every movement carefully. It's one thing to grow up inside these lodges. It's another to understand how they actually function. Father glances at him. You'll need to know this. Not someday. Soon. Silent Hawk nods. He feels the truth of it. This winter is not going to be a mild one. A child from the neighboring lodge runs past, stumbling in the snow. His mother calls after him, telling him to stay close. No one wants their children wandering too far today. Silent Hawk finishes restaking one section of the wall, just as grandmother steps outside. She moves slowly, but steadily, her wolfer robe dragging lightly through the snow. You two are doing good work, she says, looking over the repairs. But we need more insulation before the next wind shift. Father rubs his chin. Grass bundles. Yes, grandmother replies. And plenty of them. The cold is settling early. It will stay. Silent Hawk senses the seriousness in her voice. Grandmother rarely speaks with worry, but today she chooses her words carefully. She turns to Silent Hawk. Your father will take you to gather wood later. For now, you help me inside. Silent Hawk follows her back into the lodge. Inside, Mother has spread out the food bundles on the ground. Dried meat, pemmican, berries, roots of ruthing has been unwrapped and checked for frost damage. Willow Cricket helps her sort the smaller pieces into containers. Grandmother points at the inner lining of the lodge. We will add another layer behind this one. It traps more air. Silent Hawk touches the current lining. It is soft, thin, and dry. How much extra grass will we need? As much as you can fit, grandmother says. The more air we trap, the warmer we stay. Mother ties off the last food bundle and looks over. If this cold stays, we may have to begin migration early. Fedit enters hearing the last part. We can't move until we gather enough supplies. Grandmother nods slowly, then we gather fast. Silent Hawk watches his family, each one already working, already adjusting to the unexpected freeze. The morning feels heavier than usual, not because of fear, but because of responsibility. This early cold is a warning. And the family knows it. They will have to prepare harder. Move sooner, work together more tightly than before. The day has barely begun, yet it already feels full. Silent Hawk sits beside the inner wall, helping grandmother sort the grass they have left. Willow Cricket brings small clumps, trying to be useful. Mother sharpens tools for later. The cold might have come early, but so has their determination. Silent Hawk sits near the fire with his hands open to the warmth, while grandmother sorts through her bundle of tools. The lodge is steady now, but the cold outside hasn't lifted. In fact, the air creeping through the door flap feels sharper than it did earlier. The family works quietly, each person finishing a task with focus. Grandmother finally settles beside him. She doesn't say anything at first. She just watches the smoke rise in a thin line toward the opening at the top of the lodge. She always watches small details like that. Silent Hawk has learned that when she watches smoke, she's thinking. After a moment, she speaks. You're old enough now to understand why our home works the way it does. Silent Hawk straightens. He's waited a long time to hear those words. He nods, but doesn't interrupt. Grandmother lifts a hand toward the smoke hole. That opening is not simply a place for smoke to escape. It is how the fire breathes. If the opening is wrong during a storm, the fire chokes. If it's too open, snow comes in and puts the fire out. She taps her knee. Balance. Winter forces us to understand balance. Silent Hawk looks upward. The smoke rises cleanly to Dino, drifting downward. No sign of thick clouds gathering inside. Erelisis S never really thought about how the smoke knows where to go. He always assumed it just happened. Grandmother leans forward, picking up a long wooden stick. Yesterday, the wind shifted from the northwest. That kind of wind pushes smoke sideways. Small changes in direction make a big difference. Silent Hawk remembers father adjusting the flaps earlier, so if the flaps are wrong, the fire could fill the lodge with smoke. Yes, smoke can blind you, make you cough until you can't breathe. She taps the stick lightly against his forearm. A simple mistake can become a threat in winter. Mother looks up from her work. He listens well. He'll learn fast. Grandmother nods, but continues her explanation. She gestures toward the hide walls of the lodge. The double walls are another reason we survive. The inner lining gives us an extra barrier. Air trapped between the hides keeps heat from escaping too quickly. She presses her hand on the lining. This thin space means the difference between struggling to stay warm and staying warm with less effort. Silent Hawk feels the lining again with new awareness. The space behind it is small, barely the width of his hand, but he can already tell it is important. He pictures the freezing air outside, pressing against the outer hide. He imagines a small pocket of trapped air, slowing it down before it reaches the interior. Grandmother hands him a handful of dried grass. This is what we will use to thicken the lining. Grass seems simple, but it traps tiny amounts of air, hundreds of little pockets. That's insulation. The more pockets, the more warmth stays inside. He runs the grass between his fingers. It feels dry and hollow. Grandmother nods. Hollow things retain heat. Solid things lose it quickly. Willow Cricket, who has been listening quietly while pretending not to, crawls over. Does that mean my head keeps heat because it's hollow? Silent Hawk smirks. Mother tries to hide a laugh. Grandmother doesn't even look amused. Your head is hollow in a different way. The room breaks into soft, tired laughter. Cricket grins, proud of the joke even if he was the target. Grandmother continues. Hollow grass, hollow bones of animals, hollow wood that has died long ago. All of these can help us in ways you must learn. Winter allows no waste. She reaches behind her and retrieves a small bundle wrapped in rabbit hide. Inside are several pieces of dried cattail fluff. She spreads a bit onto Silent Hawk's palm. This is what we use for our footwear and some clothing layers. It weighs almost nothing, but it traps heat better than many furs. Silent Hawk rolls the fluff between his fingers. It is soft, almost weightless. How do we gather enough of this for winter? He asks. Grandmother folds her hands. That is what we will do soon. When your father returns from choosing the winter path, we gather more cattails. We gather grass. We gather small wood. Every person works. Once we move to the winter camp, there's no time for backtracking. Mother looks toward the door flap. I hope the weather gives us a few days before the move. Father enters at that moment, brushing snow from his shoulders. It will not. He drops his bundle of wood beside the fire. Clouds are building again. The cold this morning was not just passing through. It's a sign. Grandmother's expression becomes tight. The sign of an early winter. Father nods. Yes. Yes. I've spoken with Running Bear and Swift Hunter. Their families felt the same cold before dawn. Everyone agrees we must begin preparations immediately. Silent Hawk sees the seriousness between his parents. There's no alarm, but no hesitation either. Just acceptance. Mother ties off the last food bundle. Will we need to move sooner? Most likely. Father says, but first, we must strengthen what we have. Once that is done, we gather what we can and prepare the sleds. Silent Hawk glances at Grandmother. Will we be able to finish everything in time? She looks at him directly. We will. Not because we have time, but because we work until it is done. Her confidence isn't loud, but it's solid. Father sits beside Silent Hawk. You'll help with collecting materials now. This is part of becoming responsible for the family. Silent Hawk nods. I'm ready. Grandmother places a hand on his shoulder. Then understand this lesson before you start. Winter survival begins long before the storms. It begins with knowing your surroundings, your home, and your people. He listens closely. The lodge keeps you warm because generations before you learned from mistakes. They learned how the wind moves, how the snow gathers, how the fire behaves. You must learn these things too. She gestures toward the smoke hole again. Watch the smoke every morning and evening. It tells you what the wind will do. Then she points toward the ground. Feel the cold coming from the earth. If you sense it rising faster than usual, it means the frost is deepening. Finally, she taps the wall. Listen to the hides. A creaking sound means the wind is tightening them. A flapping sound means something is loose. Silent Hawk absorbs each instruction. None of it sounds complicated, yet it all feels important. Grandmother's voice becomes calm and flat, the tone she uses when she wants her words to stick. Winter doesn't kill because it is strong. Winter kills because people underestimate it. The lodge grows quiet. Father stands and reaches for his spear. I'll join the men for a short meeting. Prepare yourselves. We leave soon to gather materials. Grandmother settles back down, adjusting her robe. Silent Hawk, help your mother. Finish sorting. Then you and I will test the lining. Silent Hawk nods and moves quickly. As he works, he realizes something. This is the first time the adults speak to him as someone who shares the responsibility, not just as a child watching from the side. The early cold has changed the pace of everything, and it's changed what is expected of him. The lessons today weren't stories, they were instructions for survival. Winter is coming early, and he must be ready. By midday, the sky is clear just enough to move outside without being blinded by wind-blown snow. The cold is still sharp, but the air is steadier. Silent Hawk ties his outer robe securely, checks the knots on his leggings, and steps outside with grandmother and mother. Father is already speaking with two other men near the edge of the settlement. They point west, toward the river where cattails grow thick. Silent Hawk knows the area well. In summer, he and Willow Cricket used to chase frogs and collect smooth river stones there. Now, all those places look different, flat, white, silent. Grandmother hands Silent Hawk a woven basket. We fill this, she says. Then, another. Willow Cricket appears beside them, dragging a basket half his size. Can I help too? Mother checks his clothing, making sure nothing is loose. Stay close to us. No running. Cricket nods, though the way he bounces on his feet suggests he'll forget that rule quickly. The group makes their way down the narrow trail leading toward the river. The snow is thin here and crunches under their moccasins. Every breath forms a small cloud that disappears quickly in the dry air. As they walk, Grandmother explains the plan. We focus on Cattail first. The plant heads hold fluff that keeps our feet warm. Then we gather the dried stems and river grass. Everything is useful. Silent Hawk asks, how much do we need? Grandmother answers without hesitation. Enough for all our clothing, our bedding, and the lodge walls. Enough to last months. More than you think. Always. They reach the river bank. The water is partly frozen, thin sheets of ice forming near the shore. The cattails stand tall and rigid, their brown seed heads looking almost black in the cold. Mother kneels beside one and snaps off a dry head with a quick twist. These are ready. Open one, Silent Hawk. He pulls one from the stalk and tries to tear it gently. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the outer layer cracks, and a burst of pale fluff spills out, drifting in the light wind. Willow Cricket gasps. It looks like smoke. Silent Hawk watches some of the fluff catch an updraft and disappear toward the trees. Keep it near the basket, Grandmother says. Wind steals more than you think. He crouches lower and opens the next cattail closer to the basket. The fluff releases smoothly, landing inside with only a little drifting away. Grandmother nods. Better. The work begins in rhythm. Twist. Snap. Open. Collect. Mother gathers heads quickly, her hands steady and practiced. Silent Hawk follows her lead, becoming faster as he learns how to break them open without letting their contents scatter into the air. Willow Cricket tries, but the first cattail explodes directly into his face. He sputters and waves his arms, sending fluff everywhere. Silent Hawk shakes his head, brushing some of it off Cricket's hair. Try again, Mother says calmly. Use both hands. Don't crush it. Cricket tries again, more carefully. This time, he gets some of the fluff into his basket. He looks proud enough to burst. They continue working along the riverbank. The baskets fill slowly. The air is still bitter, but moving keeps their bodies warm. Silent Hawk focuses on his hands, the plants, and the pattern of the work. Grandmother stays beside him, checking his technique. At one point, she holds up a cattail head. These thicker ones hold more fluff. Look for the heavy ones. He begins selecting only the fuller heads. Soon his basket fills much faster. Other families appear along the river, joining the task. They greet one another briefly, then begin working their own sections of the bank. Everyone knows this is necessary. No one wastes time. After nearly an hour, Silent Hawk empties a full cattail head and presses the fluff down into the basket to make more room. Why do we need so much? He asks grandmother again, breath visible in the air. She picks up a handful of fluff from her own basket. Our moccasins, robes, and bedding will need to be thicker this year. When we move to the winter camp, there will be nights colder than this. Colder than this? Willow Cricket squeaks, eyes wide. Yes, she replies plainly, much colder. They continue in silence for a while. When the baskets are nearly full, grandmother straightens slowly, rubbing her hands. Now, the river grass. We gather that too. The dried grass stands in long patches near the water, pale and stiff. Silent Hawk walks toward it with his knife ready. Grandmother shows him how to cut it near the base. Bundles of this will go between the inner and outer lodge walls. The grass traps warm air. It also gives the walls structure. Mother joins them and begins cutting as well. The grass slices cleanly with each motion. Silent Hawk ties small bundles with thin strips of hide. Willow Cricket tries to cut a stalk, but succeeds mostly in bending it. Mother switches him to the job of holding the bundles in place while Silent Hawk ties them. The pile grows steadily. Grandmother works beside him, her pace slower but steady. She doesn't need to say anything for Silent Hawk to feel the importance of the work. Each bundle is another layer of protection. After some time, Silent Hawk looks down the river and notices someone approaching, another teenager from the village. Brightshell. She carries a basket full of cattails and gestures quietly to Silent Hawk's group. They're gathering on the west side too, she calls, pointing behind her. The air is getting colder. We should head back soon. Mother nods. One more bundle each. Then we return. Silent Hawk finishes tying his last bundle and places it into his basket. The weight has grown, but it's manageable. As they walk back toward the settlement, grandmother speaks again. Winter asks us the same question every year. Are you ready? Most people answer too late. Silent Hawk glances at the sky. The light is fading, even though it's early in the day. A thin veil of clouds forms near the horizon. He understands now why grandmother insists on working without delay. This weather is not a temporary shift. It's the start of something larger. When they return to the lodge, father is already waiting with a fresh stack of firewood. He looks relieved to see the baskets full. Well done, he says. We'll sort everything inside and prepare for the lining work. Mother sets the baskets by the fire. Grandmother removes her gloves and sits down carefully. Silent Hawk helps Willow Cricket shake off loose cattail, fluff from his clothing. Some of it lands on the ground. Cricket tries to collect it again, determined not to waste anything. Father watches them with a brief smile. Good. Waste nothing. It all matters. Silent Hawk feels a new sense of responsibility settle in his chest, steady, not heavy. The cold outside is strong, but they are preparing together. The day's work has made the danger real, but also made him feel capable. As the family begins sorting the cattail fluff into separate piles for boots, bedding, and clothing, grandmother says quietly, "This is only the beginning. Winter has not shown its full strength yet." Silent Hawk knows she's right, and he is ready to keep working. The cattail fluff and grass bundles fill most of the space near the fire pit. The lodge feels busier than usual, with everyone moving around at the same time. Silent Hawk brushes loose bits of fluff from his knees as he settles down beside grandmother. She begins sorting the material into piles based on its use. Larger piles for bedding and lodge walls, smaller ones for boots and clothing. Mother sharpens a bone needle by scraping it gently with a piece of sandstone. The needle will be used to repair seams in their winter clothes, some of which have loosened since last year. Father enters carrying a larger hide bundle. When he opens it, Silent Hawk sees the family's full winter set. Thick robes made from bison hide, leggings lined with fur, mittens stitched with rabbit pelt, hoods made from beaver skin. These must all be checked, Father says. The season doesn't care how new or old they are. Weak stitching becomes a weak point for the cold. Grandmother gestures toward the items. Bring everything closer to the light. Silent Hawk lifts each robe carefully. The leather is heavy and stiff from months of storage, but still strong. Grandmother begins inspecting the edges, feeling the seams with her fingertips. Willow Cricket sits beside her, pulling the mittens onto his small hands. They nearly cover his forearms. He grins. I look like a bear. Grandmother takes the mittens back. You'll look like a frozen bear if you don't keep these dry. Silent Hawk sits down and starts laying the clothing out flat. Mother examines his earlier knots from the insulation gathering. You tied the grass bundles well, she says. Your hands are steadier this year. Silent Hawk feels a quiet pride, though he doesn't respond out loud. Father brings over a smaller hide and unrolls it. Inside are the winter moccasins, 2 pairs for each family member. The newer pair is thicker and taller, reaching halfway up the calf. Last winter, Grandmother had spent days shaping them, layer by layer. Thick hide outside, soft leather inside, and cattail fluff packed between the layers. Grandmother lifts one moccasin and turns it slowly. These need new stuffing. The snow will soak through faster this year. She hands Silent Hawk a pile of cattail fluff. Take out the old stuffing. Replace it with this. Silent Hawk pulls the older moccasin toward him. He unties the laces and peels back the inner layer. The fluff inside is flattened over time. He removes it carefully, noticing how thin it has become. When he replaces it with fresh cattail fluff, the difference is immediate. The new stuffing feels thicker, warmer, and fuller. Grandmother nods. That will keep your feet warm even when the snow gets deep. Willow Cricket watches with interest. Can I do mine? Mother shakes her head gently. Help me with the leggings instead. Cricket kneels beside her, handing her small strips of hide used for stitching reinforcement. Grandmother continues her inspection quietly. Check every seam. A tear the width of your finger can become large enough to lose heat from your whole arm. Silent Hawk notices small cracks in the hide of his old leggings. Mother points to them. These cracks grow in the cold. We soften the leather with fat and repair them before they turn into holes. She applies a thin layer of animal fat to the cracked leather, rubbing it in until the surface becomes more flexible. Then she reinforces the seam with sinew thread. Willow Cricket asks, why do the clothes crack? The cold dries the hide, Mother answers. And the wind pulls at it. Everything wears out faster in winter. Father approaches with a tool in his hunter scraper made from an elk bone. When we move to the winter camp, the cold will be much worse. We need our tools ready as well. He hands Silent Hawk the scraper. Your job is to sharpen the edge. Not too much, just enough to make it clean. Silent Hawk holds the tool the way. Father showed him before and draws the edge along the stone. The sound is soft, but steady. He checks the sharpness with his thumb. Good, Father says. We will use these to clean hides and prepare more clothing if needed. Grandmother finishes one robe and sets it aside. She looks up at Silent Hawk. You'll help me check the sleeping furs next. Sleeping furs are heavier and thicker than clothing. They form the base of warmth at night when the fire burns low. Silent Hawk spreads them out. He notices loose hair in some spots and a small tear along the edge of one. Grandmother inspects the tear. This needs repair tonight. Silent Hawk threads sinew through the bone needle and watches as Grandmother guides his hands. Move the needle in and out slowly. Make the stitches tight. The cold will pull on these seams when you lie on them. He focuses, careful not to poke himself or make the stitches uneven. You're improving, she says. After a few minutes, he smiles faintly. I guess I'm learning. You're learning because you're paying attention, she replies. There's a difference. Willow Cricket wanders over, peeking at the furs. Are we going to use all of these? Yes, Father answers from behind him. Nights in the winter camp are colder than anything you've felt yet. Cricket shivers slightly. Colder than last year. Much colder, Grandmother confirms. Last winter was mild. This one is not. Silent Hawk pauses. How do you know? Grandmother points toward the wall of the lodge. The wind this morning. The ice on the ground. The way the snow formed thin layers on the river instead of melting. And the sky, she nods. Toward the smoke hole. The color of it at dawn. Silent Hawk considers her words. He knows Grandmother has lived through many winters. She has seen good ones and terrible ones. Mother begins packing the refinished clothing piece by piece. Once we move, we won't have time to fix anything. We need everything ready before then. Father adds, tomorrow we begin building the travois for the dogs. If the wind turns again, we move sooner than planned. Silent Hawk stopped sewing for a moment. He hadn't realized the move could happen so quickly. Grandmother sees his expression. Winter does not wait. We cannot either. The room becomes busy again. Willow Cricket helps Mother organize the mittens and hoods. Father checks the bone tools. Silent Hawk moves to the next set of repairs, feeling more confident with every stitch. By the time they are done, the clothing looks renewed, thicker, cleaner, reinforced. The bundles now hold everything they need to face snowstorms, freezing wind, and long travel days. Grandmother straightens slowly. Tonight, we test every layer. Try on your winter clothing before sleep. Silent Hawk lifts his robe, thick and heavy in his hands. All of it, she says. Better to find a mistake now than when we're halfway to the winter camp. Willow Cricket groans, already imagining the layers. But it's so hot inside. Mother places a hand on his shoulder. If your clothing fails on the trail, heat will be the least of your worries. Silent Hawk finishes tying off the repaired fur. He looks at the neatly stacked winter gear, now ready for the coming freeze. He understands now why the adults work with such urgency. This isn't about comfort, it's about survival, and this early cold is a warning they cannot ignore. The next morning begins earlier than usual. Silent Hawk wakes to the sound of footsteps outside and faint voices drifting through the hide walls. The cold isn't quite as sharp as the day before, but the air carries the same heavy stillness that announces winter settling in for good. Father is already dressed, fastening his leggings and pulling on his outer robe. He spots Silent Hawk sitting up. You're awake. Good. Today we need to choose the winter camp. The scouts will be returning soon. There'll be a meeting. Silent Hawk rubs the sleep from his eyes. Are we moving today? Not today, Father replies. But soon, if the scouts find a good site, we need to prepare quickly. Willow Cricket shifts in his blankets with a tired groan. Mother gently nudges him. Up, she says. We need to have everything ready before noon. Grandmother is at the fire already, stirring a pot of hot broth with strips of dried meat. The small bit of warmth that radiates from the fire takes some of the edge off the cold. As the family sits to eat, voices outside grow clearer. More people are gathering near the center of the settlement. Silent Hawk hears Running Bear, then Swift Hunter, two experienced scouts known for their knowledge of the land. Grandmother listens closely. Their back fader stands. We should hear the report. Silent Hawk puts down his bowl and follows him outside. The scouts return. The settlement's main clearing is filled with families gathering in a loose circle. Some are still adjusting their clothing. Others carry children half asleep on their shoulders. At the center stand Running Bear and Swift Hunter, both with snow crusted along the hems of their robes. Their dogs rest behind them, exhausted but alert. Strong Oak, the oldest man in the village, steps forward to address the group. Tell us what you found, Running Bear nods. We searched west and south. The southern valleys are too open. The wind there will cut through even with heavy snow walls. Swift Hunter steps forward. But west, we found a sheltered valley, surrounded by low ridges. A river runs through it, not fully frozen yet. Pines nearby for fuel. A soft murmur spreads through the crowd. A valley with water and trees is ideal. It means protection from wind, access to firewood, and a reliable water source. Run and Bear continues. There is space for all our lodges. The ground is firm. Game tracks showed deer passed through only 2 days ago. It is far enough from the open plains to block the worst storms, but still close enough to the river trails we use. Father nods slowly. Good. Strong Oak raises his hand to quiet everyone. How long is the walk? Swift Hunter answers. 2 days, if the weather holds. Possibly less if we move fast. Silent Hog feels a knot form in his chest. 2 days of travel in freezing conditions. This is difficult, but not unexpected. Someone in the crowd asks, will we be safe there? Running Bear thinks for a moment. If we reach it before heavy snowfall, yes. Strong Oak turns to the group. Then we must prepare immediately. The cold this week is the earliest we have seen in years. We cannot wait. Grandmother joins Silent Hawk and Father as the crowd begins to disperse. What do you think? Silent Hawk asks her quietly. Grandmother folds her hands into her sleeves. A valley surrounded by ridges is good. Snow will gather on the outer slopes. Not inside. The river will help us keep water unfrozen longer. But what about the storm? Silent Hawk asks, if it comes early again. Grandmother looks toward the sky. Then the move becomes harder, but staying here will be worse. Mother, who overheard, adds, the flatlands offer no protection now. The wind could tear through our lodge again if it worsens. Father places a hand on Silent Hawk's shoulder. We begin preparations today. The first task is building travois for the dogs. Building the travois, Silent Hawk follows Father to the edge of the settlement where the lodge poles are stored. The travois is simple but sturdy, a wooden frame dragged behind the dogs with ropes, used to carry hides, sleeping furs, and supplies. Father selects 2 long poles, each taller than Silent Hawk, and places them on the ground parallel to each other. These will be the main runners, he explains. Find branches thick enough to make the crosspieces. Silent Hawk moves through the nearby storage pile and picks out 3 straight branches. Father tests each one by bending it slightly. Good, he says. They won't snap in the cold. Together they lash the crosspieces to the long poles, using sinew rope, pulling the knots tight until the wood creaks. Willow Cricket arrives carrying a coil of rope. Can I tie something? Father hands him a shorter piece. Tie this one. It doesn't need to be perfect, just strong. Silent Hawk can't help but watch as Cricket struggles with the knot. His fingers are small, and the cold makes them stiff. Still, Cricket manages to tie the rope securely enough. Better than last year, Silent Hawk says. Cricket grins proudly. Mother arrives with 2 rolled hides and places them beside the finished frame. These will be used to wrap the supplies. Make sure the dogs can pull it without the load shifting. Silent Hawk helps Father position the hides and tie them in place. Father checks the balance by lifting the front of the frame and dragging it a few steps. It will hold, he says. Planning the move by late morning. The entire settlement is busy. Families gather wood, pack food bundles, and check each lodge for repairs. Some of the older children lead the dogs through light exercises to get them ready for the long walk. Strong Oak meets with the adults again. Silent Hawk listens from a distance. We move in 2 days. Strong Oak announces, tomorrow, we finish preparing. The next morning, we leave. The decision spreads quickly. Some people seem relieved to have a clear plan. Others look nervous. Silent Hawk returns to the lodge where Grandmother is sitting with a map made of bark and charcoal lines. She traces the route with her finger. This river here, she says, is the one that curves toward the valley. If the ice breaks, we will need to cross where the current is weaker. You stay close to your father when we reach that point. Silent Hawk studies the map carefully. The valley looks far away. Will we really reach it in 2 days? He asks. Grandmother nods. If the weather stays like this, yes. If the wind returns, the journey will feel twice as long. Willow Cricket joins them, carrying a small wooden bowl of snow. "I'm helping gather water," he says proudly. Mother ruffles his hair. "Good. Every task matters." Father enters a moment later. "The travois are ready. We'll check the dogs again at sunset." Grandmother folds the map. "Then we continue preparing tonight. Tomorrow we pack." Silent Hawk takes a deep breath. The valley is their best chance, but winter is moving quickly, and now, so must they. Silent Hawk wakes before the others. The cold still sits heavy in the air, but there is more movement outside than usual. Today is the day they begin taking down their home. The village is quiet, but not in the peaceful way of early mornings. This quiet feels like everyone is preparing themselves for the work ahead. Father is already dressing when Silent Hawk stands. "Eat quickly," he says. "We have a long day." Mother hands Silent Hawk a bowl of warm broth. Willow Cricket is half asleep but manages to sit up when she places a robe around his shoulders. Grandmother finishes tying her hair into its usual braid. No one wastes words. After breakfast, Father steps outside and calls for Silent Hawk. Together, they begin the process of dismantling the lodge. Silent Hawk has helped with small parts of this task in past years, but never with the full responsibility. Today, he is expected to work like an adult. Father begins with the inner lining. Silent Hawk moves beside him, carefully untying each strip of sinew that secures the lining to the lodge poles. The hide comes down neatly, folding into itself as they guide it to the floor. They roll it tightly to keep it dry and carry it outside. Next comes the bedding. Mother and Willow Cricket fold each sleeping fur, shaking loose bits of grass and fluff. Grandmother inspects them closely, making sure none are damp. A wet sleep in fur in winter is dangerous. Father returns for the outer hide. He warns Silent Hawk, "Stay clear when I loosen the ground stakes. The hide will shift quickly." Silent Hawk steps back, but keeps close enough to watch carefully. Father pulls up the pegs one by one until the heavy covering begins to sag. Silent Hawk grabs the edge and helps guide it to the ground, so it doesn't drag through the snow. They fold the hide slowly. Its weight surprises Silent Hawk every time. Even after years, he forgets how much strength it takes to manage something made from so many bison skins. Father checks the seams for any sign of damage and nods with satisfaction. This will hold another winter. The frame of the lodge remains long, wooden poles leaning together in the center. The structure looks bare without its covering, like a skeleton exposed to the cold air. Father motions for Silent Hawk to stand beneath the poles with him. "This is the most difficult part," he says. "The poles are heavy. We take them down in the correct order so nothing breaks." Silent Hawk watches as Father climbs halfway up the central poles. He carefully unties the rope at the top, where the main supports meet. Once loose, he lowers the first pole toward Silent Hawk, who catches it near the base and keeps it steady while Father comes down. One by one, they lower the poles, laying them in a neat stack. Silent Hawk's arms grow tired, but he forces himself to keep his grip tight. Dropping a pole could damage it or injure someone. Father notices his effort, but doesn't comment. Instead, he hands Silent Hawk the last pole himself. It feels heavier than the others, but he manages. By mid-morning, their lodge is fully dismantled. The ground where it stood is marked only by the fire pit and the flattened circle of grass. Silent Hawk stands there for a moment, realizing how quickly a home can disappear. But this isn't loss. This is preparation. The lodge will stand again in the Winter Valley. As other families take down their own lodges, the village fills with activity. Dogs bark as they're harnessed. Children carry small bundles. Elders sit near the remaining fires, offering guidance whenever someone calls for help. Father brings the travois they built yesterday and lays it beside their supplies. He tests the straps and checks the balance. We load the heaviest items on the bottom. Silent Hawk helps carry the lodge poles to the travois. They tie them down in a tight bundle. The outer hide goes on next, pressed flat so it won't shift during travel. Then come the bedding, the food bundles, and the smaller tools. Mother ties everything securely, checking each knot twice. Willow Cricket drags his small basket of cattail fluff toward her. "Where does this go?" "Inside the sleeping furs?" she says. It keeps them dry during the trip. Silo Hawk watches his brother push handfuls of fluff into the furs with surprising care. For once, Cricket treats the task seriously. Maybe he understands what's at stake. By noon, the entire village is a collection of travois. Packed bundles and groups of people resting briefly before the next task. Grandmother sits beside Silent Hawk, handing him a piece of dried meat. "You worked well," she says. Silent Hawk nods. "It feels strange to take everything apart." "It always feels that way," she replies. "But this is what our people do. We follow the seasons because staying still when winter comes would be foolish." Silent Hawk looks toward the horizon. "Do you think the valley will be safe?" Grandmother studies the sky for a moment. "Nothing is ever guaranteed, but if the scouts say it is good, then we trust them. Winter survival is a choice we make together." Willow Cricket joins them, holding a rope. "Is it time to help with the dogs?" Father approaches at that moment. "Yes." "Come." They walk to the dog teams. Silent Hawk's family has 3 dogs. Iron Paw speaks softly in Frosttail. The dogs are sturdy and used to the work. Silent Hawk pets Iron Paw gently. Father adjusts the harnesses. "During the journey, keep your eyes on the dogs. If they slow down or the travois begins to drag unevenly, we stop. No rushing." Silent Hawk nods. "I understand." Once the dogs are connected to the travois, the final checks begin. Mother inspects the food packs. Grandmother sorts the extra insulation. Father checks each knot. Then Strong Oak walks through the camp, speaking loudly enough for all to hear. "Tomorrow, before sunrise, we leave. Tonight, we rest and prepare." The announcement brings a quiet but firm response from the village. People move with more intention, gathering their families, finishing the last repairs, checking every piece of clothing and gear. Silent Hawk stands beside the stacked lodge poles. In less than a day, they will walk across frozen land, relying on the strength of their dogs, their clothing, and everything they've prepared. He watches as the sun begins to lower in the sky. The wind picks up again, rushing cold air against his cheeks. He tightens his robe. Tomorrow, they begin the journey. Tonight, they finish becoming ready for it. The village begins moving before the sun rises. Silent Hawk steps out of the remaining firelight into the dim morning. Everything is quiet, except for the low grumbling of dogs and the crunch of snow under boots. The cold is steady, not the violent, sudden cold of earlier days, but a deeper cold that sinks into the air like it intends to stay. Father tightens the rope on their travois one last time. The dog's Iron Paw speaks softly, and Frosttail stand ready, their breath forming thick clouds. Mother hands Silent Hawk a small bundle of dried meat to keep in his belt. "Eat when you need it," she says. "The walk will feel long." Willow Cricket rubs his hands together, trying to warm them. Grandmother adjusts his hood and says, "Stay between us. Don't wander." Silent Hawk looks around. Families line up in groups. The elders stand near the front. Strong Oak gives the signal to move. The sound of poles sliding across frozen earth begins immediately as the first travois pulls forward. Silent Hawk walks beside his father, keeping pace with the dogs. Behind them, Mother and Grandmother walk with Willow Cricket. The sky brightens slowly, turning from deep blue to a pale gray. Snow cracks under each step. The first part of the trail leads through open plains. The ground is mostly flat, but the wind has swept snow into shallow waves, making the surface uneven. Silent Hawk steps carefully, trying not to twist his ankle. He watches the dogs closely. Iron Paw leads confidently, ears pointed forward. Frosttail pulls steadily but glances back at Silent Hawk, every so often, as if checking that he's still there. After about an hour, the cold begins to press harder. Silent Hawk pulls his robe closer. His breath feels heavier. His legs grow stiff from walking, but he forces them to keep moving. Most people stay quiet. The only real sound is the steady dragging of wooden poles and the occasional shout from someone helping a dog team. Willow Cricket coughs behind him. Grandmother tells him to cover his nose with his hood. Cricket obeys, though the cold still reddens his cheeks. As they walk, Silent Hawk studies the land. The wind carries small bits of ice across the ground, making faint ticking sounds as they hit his leggings. The sun remains hidden behind a thin layer of clouds, offering light but no warmth. Every few moments, Silent Hawk looks at Father to match his pace. Father breaks the silence first. We need to reach the river trail before midday. That'll give us a sheltered path for the afternoon. Silent Hawk nods. How long until then? A few more hours. The hours feel slow. Every step sends a dull ache up through Silent Hawk's legs, but he knows stopping isn't an option. Eventually, the land begins to slope downward. The ground becomes firmer underfoot. Willow Cricket lets out a small sound of relief. Is this the river trail? Almost, Father says. Stay close. The banks can be slippery. When they reach the river, the ice near the edge is thin and uneven, but the trail beside it is clear enough to follow. The group pauses to tighten straps and drink water from small hide pouches. The break lasts only a few minutes, just enough to breathe. Silent Hawk looks at the river surface. Thin cracks branch across the ice like long, narrow trails. He steps carefully as they move along the path. Grandmother calls to him softly. Watch the ice, not the sky. It tells you where the ground is strongest. Silo Hawk nods and keeps his eyes forward. At one point, Frosttail slips slightly on a patch of frozen mud. Silent Hawk steadies the travois quickly. Father gives him a short nod of approval. By midday, everyone is tired. The cold has settled into their clothing despite the layers. Mother hands Silent Hawk a strip of meat. He chews it slowly as they keep walking. The food warms him just enough to continue. As the trail curves, they reach a steeper section. The river dips into a small ravine. People move single file, choosing their steps with care. Silent Hawk feels the ground shift under one foot and quickly regains balance. Willow Cricket slips once, but Grandmother catches his arm. Slow down, she says. We are not racing. Cricket nods, embarrassed. They eventually reach a flatter area. The land widens again, giving more space to walk. Silent Hawk feels his legs growing heavier, but the thought of stopping makes him colder. The dogs pull steadily, though Iron Paw's pace has slowed a little. Father kneels to chit their paws. We'll rest soon, he says. Maybe 1 more hour? Silent Hawk. Here's someone from another family mutter. 1 more hour always feels like 5. The remark earns a few tired smiles. The second half of the day is harder. Snow starts falling, light flakes at first, then thicker ones. Silent Hawk watches the ground change from smooth white to uneven piles. The temperature drops again. More people begin wrapping extra furs around themselves. Grandmother adjusts her robe but keeps moving. Mother instructs Willow Cricket to stay between them at all times, now that visibility is dropping. The dogs continue with determination, noses low, tails stiff. Silent Hawk's legs ache. His shoulders burn from carrying his robe and supplies. Every time he thinks they might stop, Strong Oak calls for the group to continue. But just as Silent Hawk feels his breath turning ragged, Father finally speaks. There, up ahead. Through the falling snow, Silent Hawk sees a small cluster of thick pine trees creating a natural windbreak. Several families are already gathering near them. They've reached the evening stop, a temporary resting place for the night. The moment they enter the shelter of the trees, the wind decreases noticeably. The break in the wind is immediate and welcome. Silent Hawk breathes out slowly, feeling his muscles loosen. Father unharnesses the dogs while Mother spreads the bedding over a flat area. Grandmother lowers herself onto a log and massages her knees. Willow Cricket drops onto the snow and lies on his back. I can't feel my feet, he complains. Mother nudges him upright. Sit near the fire. Feeling returns faster that way. Silent Hawk helps Father gather branches to start a fire. The heat is weak at first, but slowly grows stronger. The simple act of sitting down sends a wave of relief through his body. Grandmother sips a bit of warm water. This was a hard first day, she says. Tomorrow will be easier. Our bodies adjust. Silent Hawk isn't sure if that's true, but hearing her say it helps. As the fire steadies and darkness settles, Silent Hawk looks around at the resting families. Everyone is exhausted, but everyone has made it through the first day. The valley still feels far away, but now the journey feels real. Tomorrow they walk again. Tonight, they regain their strength. The fire crackles softly under the cluster of pines, but its warmth does not reach far. The cold remains heavy, settling low to the ground and creeping into every gap in clothing and bedding. Silent Hawk sits beside the flames, rubbing his hands together and watching the sparks rise into the branches above. The entire group looks tired, more tired than earlier. The long walk and the falling snow drained everyone. Father adjusts the dogs' harnesses one last time before letting them lie beside the structure of the travois. The animals curl into tight shapes, noses tucked beneath their tails. Speak softly lets out a low groan as she settles. Mother spreads the bedding carefully on the flattest part of the snow. The furs feel cold at first touch, but they will warm once the family lies down. Willow Cricket stands close to the fire, bouncing lightly on his feet. "Why can't we build a lodge frame here?" Cricket asks. "It would be warmer." Father shakes his head. "We don't have time. We're only staying one night. If we build a frame now, we lose half a day tomorrow." Grandmother nods from her seat. Travel shelters must be light and fast. A full lodge is for winter camps, not for pauses. Silent Hawk looks at the scattered groups nearby. No one has built any kind of structure, only low-hide lean-tos. Supported by poles or branches, the hides flap softly when the wind picks up, but they offer some protection. Theirs is still being assembled. Father arranges 2 poles in a narrow triangle, and Silent Hawk helps lift the hide over them. The lean-to covers only part of the ground. It's enough for the family if they lie close together. As they work, the cold grows sharper. Silent Hawk's breath feels heavier and slower. When he lifts the hide, his fingers burn from touching it with bare skin for even a moment. Mother nods and says, "Put your gloves back on quickly. Frost comes fast at night." He nods and pulls the gloves over his reddening fingers. They finish setting up the lean-to, and Mother urges Willow Cricket inside first. "Stay low. The ground is cold, but the air above is colder." Cricket crawls beneath the hide, pulling the furs over himself. Grandmother follows slowly, using Silent Hawk's arm for support. Once she's settled, she exhales in a tired sigh. Silent Hawk sits near the fire again while Father checks the dogs and the supplies. The flames are small. The wood from the pines burns quickly and doesn't produce strong heat. They can't risk using too much tomorrow. They need enough to start the morning fire. Father kneels and adds a small piece of wood. "This has to last until we sleep. After that, the furs and body heat must do the rest." Silent Hawk nods. He glances around at the other groups setting their own small fires. The scene feels strange. No lodges, no familiar structures, just temporary shelters for a night. Even though everyone is close, the vastness of the open land feels larger in the dark. As they prepare to settle in, a sudden cough breaks the quiet. Silent Hawk turns to see Elder Stone Willow, a man known for his steady voice and strong hands, sitting beside his family. He looks pale and tired. His daughter supports him as he leans forward, coughing again. The cold seems to hit his chest harder than anyone else. Mother notices and says quietly, "He did not look well yesterday." Father replies, "He insisted on walking with the others, but the cold does not treat everyone equally." Grandmother calls softly from under the lean-to. Some bodies struggled more as they age. The cold always finds the weakest point. Silent Hawk watches the scene with a sinking feeling. He remembers Stone Willow telling stories to the children during summer evenings, his voice strong and full. Now his coughing echoes across the quiet camp. Father returns to sit beside Silent Hawk. "We can't do much for him out here," he says. "At the winter camp, he can rest properly." Silent Hawk asks, "Will he be able to walk tomorrow?" Father hesitates. "We will see." As the night deepens, the cold intensifies. Snow continues falling lightly, settling onto the lean-tos and the furs. Silent Hawk feels it landing on his hood, melting slowly. When he brushes some off, his hand meets a layer of frost forming beneath it. Mother gestures for Silent Hawk to come under the lean-to. He crawls inside, moving between Grandmother and Willow Cricket. The small space traps heat faster than the open air, but the ground is still a cold that seeps upward. Father lies at the entrance, blocking the wind that comes from the northern side. Mother lies on the other end, pulling an extra fur over everyone. Silent Hawk listens to the sounds outside, the occasional snap of a branch from a nearby fire, the dogs shifting positions, the wind pushing lightly against the trees. It feels like a long time before the cold settles enough for them to relax. Willow Cricket eventually stops shivering and falls asleep. Grandmother's breathing steadies. Silent Hawk remains awake longer, staring at the hide roof above them. He thinks about tomorrow. Another full day of walking, another night without a real shelter. The valley still feels far. Eventually, exhaustion pulls him into a shallow sleep. He wakes sometime during the night to a soft sound, hushed talking. Father's voice is low, speaking with strong oak outside the shelter. Silent Hawk doesn't move, listening carefully. He can't travel like this, Strong Oak says quietly. Father replies, we can take turns helping him, but the pace will slow. If the weather changes, we cannot leave him. Strong Oak says firmly, but we also cannot stop. A long pause. Follows. Silent Hawk feels a tightness in his chest. They must be talking about Stone Willow. Finally, Father says, we will stay close to his family tomorrow. If it weakens, we will adjust. The voices fade as the two men walk toward another shelter. Silent Hawk closes his eyes, but sleep doesn't come easily again. When morning arrives, everyone wakes stiff and cold. The fire is little more than glowing coals. Frost covers the inside of the lean-to. Mother helps Willow Cricket sit up, while Grandmother rubs her hands together slowly. Silent Hawk crawls out and sees Stone Willow being helped upright by his daughter. The elder's breathing is shallow. He looks weaker than he did the night before. Father gives Silent Hawk a look that says everything without words. Today will be harder. The family begins packing, rolling the furs, tying the hide, hooking the dogs to the travois again. Everyone moves slower, quietly saving energy for the long walk ahead. When they finally begin moving, the cold air bites sharply, waking everyone fully. The snow beneath their feet makes a crisp sound with each step. Silent Hawk looks back only once. The places where the lean-tos stood are already half covered in drifting snow. It is as if they were never there. The journey continues. The winter valley waits ahead. But the night without protection has reminded everyone how vulnerable they are on open ground and how quickly the cold can change the course of their journey. The second day of travel begins with a slow, steady pace. The cold is still sharp, but not as biting as the previous morning. Snow falls lightly as the group moves west, and the land slowly begins to change. The flat plains shift into rolling ground, and distant trees appear more often. Silent Hawk feels the change before he fully sees it. The air becomes slightly calmer, as if the wind is losing some of its strength. Father checks their direction often, guiding the dogs and adjusting the travois rope. Willow Cricket walks with Mother and Grandmother, staying close this time without needing reminders. No one wants to repeat the discomfort of the previous night. The miles pass quietly. Silent Hawk's legs ache from the constant movement, but he keeps walking. The dog's paws crunch steadily on the snow, never slowing unless Father signals them to stop. Ahead, Strong Oak raises his arm, signaling a brief rest. Silent Hawk exhales and stops beside his family. Mother hands him water, careful not to spill any as she opens the pouch. It's beginning to freeze around the edges. We're getting closer, Father says. You'll see the ridges soon. Silent Hawk looks ahead but sees only faint shapes in the white landscape. The ridges must still be far. He lifts the travois slightly while Father checks the balance. Strong Oak's voice carries through the wind. Everyone ready? We continue. The group begins moving again, and this time, Silent Hawk notices something new. Ground slowly climbs upward. The rise is gentle, but steady. Soon, small pines appear scattered across the land, their green branches. A welcome sight after miles of open white. Grandmother smiles faintly when she sees them. These trees mean shelter is near. Silent Hawk steps around a fallen branch and continues climbing. The trail leads them over a small ridge. When he reaches the top, the view opens, and his breath catches not from cold, but from relief. Beyond the ridge lies a long sheltered valley. Tall pines line the slopes. The land dips downward into a wide, curved basin, protected from wind by gentle hills on all sides. Down the center runs a river not fully frozen, its surface dark against the snow. Smoke does not rise from the valley, but the appearance of it feels welcoming, like a place meant for people to live. It's beautiful, Willow Cricket says softly. Mother nods. More important, it's safe. Silent Hawk looks across the valley. The wind that had followed them for 2 days barely touches this place. The trees soften the air. The slopes block the gusts. It already feels warmer. Father rests his hand on Silent Hawk's shoulder. This is where we build our winter home. The group begins descending into the valley. The snow here is deeper, but softer. The dogs perk up, sensing the end of the long journey. Silent Hawk feels a weight lifting from his chest. They made it before the worst storms. Families spread out across the valley floor, choosing flat patches of ground near the river or closer to the tree line. Each family picks its own spot, but everyone stays close enough to see one another. Father walks slowly around an open area, measuring the space with his steps. Here, he says, this is ours. The ground is even, the wind blocked, and the river is close enough for water. Mother nods in agreement. Grandmother sits on a fallen log, taking in the surroundings. Yes, she says, this will do. Willow Cricket stands beside Silent Hawk, eyes wide. We get to build our lodge here. Silent Hawk looks at the space and feels something close to pride. Yes. And this time, we help with all of it. Father calls for Silent Hawk. Start unloading the travois. Silent Hawk unties the ropes. The dogs shake themselves free of the harness. Frosttail rolls in the snow while Iron Paw trots over to sniff the ground. They seem pleased with the new location. The family begins unpacking. Father places the lodge poles on the ground in a neat pile. Mother arranges the bedding near a tree trunk. Grandmother spreads the tools on a piece of hide to inspect everything after the long journey. Soon, the valley fills with movement. Everywhere Silent Hawk looks, families are working, laying down poles, clearing snow, preparing fire pits. The air is busy with the sounds of tools scraping wood, dogs barking, and people calling instructions. Father hands Silent Hawk 2 poles. Hold these upright. Silent Hawk plants his feet in the snow and lifts the poles. Father ties them together at the top, forming the beginning of the lodge frame. Willow Cricket watches with wide eyes, clutching a handful of grass bundles. Father and Silent Hawk raise more poles, one at a time, leaning them against the center point until the frame begins to take shape. When the structure stands solid and balanced, Silent Hawk steps back. This frame will carry the weight of their entire winter. Mother brings the inner hide lining first. Silent Hawk and Father stretch it around the base of the frame, tying it tightly. The hide blocks most of the wind instantly. Then, together, they hang the second layer, leaving the gap between the walls for insulation. Willow Cricket pushes grass bundles toward Grandmother, who feeds them between the walls to fill the insulating space. More, she says each time, and Cricket gathers more. When the outer hide is finally raised, the lodge stands tall and strong, almost identical to the one they left behind, but this one feels more necessary, more urgent. Silent Hawk helps Father secure the bottom edges with earth, forming a seal against wind. Inside, the space feels familiar again. Silent Hawk spreads the bedding, while Mother arranges the tools near the fire pit. Grandmother tests the smoke hole flaps, adjusting them slightly. Willow Cricket sits beside the empty fire pit, rubbing his hands together. It feels like home already, he says. Silent Hawk agrees. The journey's fatigue melts a little as he settles into the space that will be theirs for months. Outside, Strong Oak walks past, his voice carrying across the valley. Everyone, prepare firewood before nightfall. The temperature will drop once the sun leaves the ridge. Families begin gathering fallen branches and cutting larger pieces. Silent Hawk joins Father, who is already selecting thick, dry wood. They carry it back to the lodge in several trips. The air grows colder as shadows stretch across the ground. Inside the lodge, grandmother lights the first fire of their winter home. The flame grows slowly, warming the space and filling it with the familiar smell of smoke and wood. Willow Cricket leans close to the fire, smiling. "We made it," Mother says quietly. Silent Hawk looks around the lodge, the sturdy walls. Tea-warm furs, the glowing fire end feels a deep, quiet relief. The valley truly is a sanctuary. Father sits beside him. "This was a hard journey. Tomorrow, we make this place stronger. But tonight, we rest." Silent Hawk nods. For the first time in many days, he isn't thinking about the cold, or the wind, or the distance they have left to travel. They have reached the valley. They have a shelter. And winter hasn't beaten them here. Morning light reaches the valley slowly, filtered through the tall pines, and softened by the surrounding ridges. The lodge is warm from the night's fire, and Silent Hawk wakes feeling more rested than he has in days. The long journey is behind them. For a moment, everything feels steady, but that moment ends when he steps outside. A small group has gathered near the center of the valley. Their voices are quiet. Their movements are deliberate. Silent Hawk sees the way people stand, shoulders lowered, heads slightly bowed, and his stomach tightens. Mother joins him outside and sees the same thing. "Stay with me," she says gently. Together, they walk toward the gathering. Willow Cricket follows close behind, holding on to Silent Hawk's sleeve. Father and grandmother meet them halfway. "It is Stone Willow," Father says. "He passed some time before dawn." Silent Hawk's chest tightens. He knew the elder had been weak, especially after the night on the open ground, but he still hoped the valley's shelter would help him recover. Stone Willow was always strong, always calm. Hearing that he's gone feels unreal. Grandmother steps forward. "His spirit left quietly," she says. "His family was with him." Silent Hawk remembers Stone Willow's stories. How he used to talk about hunting in deep snow, how he would laugh with the children, how he carved small wooden toys for anyone who asked. It's strange to think he won't be part of the winter ahead. The village begins preparing the place of honor. Strong Oak speaks softly with Stone Willow's daughter and grandsons as they bring out a long platform made from smooth pine logs. Silent Hawk has seen this process once before, years ago, but never this closely. Grandmother tells him, "Come. You're old enough now to stand with the others." Silent Hawk's heart beats faster, but he nods and follows her toward the gathering. Willow Cricket stays beside Mother, looking uncertain but wanting to understand. Stone Willow's body is wrapped in soft hides, layered carefully for respect and warmth even. Though he no longer feels the cold, his family carries him to the wooden platform, lifting him slowly and with care. Elders begin arranging items around him. A carved wooden bowl, a small bundle of sage, the walking stick he used on long journeys, and a necklace made from elk teeth. These are not offerings for him to take, but symbols of the life he lived and the skills he taught. Silent Hawk stands among the others, listening closely as Strong Oak begins speaking. His voice carries steadily through the valley, even in the cold morning air. Stone Willow walked beside us through many winters. His knowledge has guided our people for decades. He taught our hunters patience. He taught our children stories that reminded them who they are. And he traveled with us, even in this difficult season. Today we honor his journey. The crowd remains silent, but the silence is respectful, not empty. Strong Oak continues. He traveled far with us these past days. His spirit is no longer bound by cold or pain. We send him with the same strength he showed us. Silent Hawk glances at Stone Willow's family. His daughter wipes her eyes but stays strong. His grandsons stand close, hands resting on the wooden platform. Grandmother leans towards Silent Hawk and whispers, "Remember this. We honor those who came before us by carrying their lessons forward." Silent Hawk nods, absorbing the moment carefully. He watches the smoke rise from a small ceremonial fire nearby. The elders wave its scent toward the platform, letting it drift gently upward. The cold in the valley feels different today. Not harsher, not softer, just deeply present, like part of the moment. As the ceremony continues, Silent Hawk hears quiet weeping mixed with soft prayers. Willow Cricket looks confused, saddened, and overwhelmed. Mother pulls him closer. After a time, the village begins preparing the raised scaffold. They choose a location on the western ridge where the wind is calm and the sunlight reaches in the late afternoon. Silent Hog follows farther up the slope. Together they bring long, sturdy poles. The scaffold must be secure and above the ground so animals cannot disturb it. When the structure is ready, several men lift the platform carefully. Silent Hawk watches in silence as they carry Stone Willow upward. The path is short, but each step is careful. Stone Willow's daughter walks behind them, supported by her sons. When they reach the top of the ridge, they place the platform gently on the scaffold. The hides covering Stone Willow move slightly in the breeze, almost as if acknowledging the change in air. The final words are spoken by Strong Oak. Rest among the ancestors. Watch over those who follow. Silent Hawk feels a mix of sadness and respect. He never realized how important Stone Willow's presence had been, until now how much strength comes from people who carry memories of many winters. As the group walks back down the ridge, Grandmother places her hand on Silent Hawk's arm. "You saw the way we honored him," she says. "Someday, you will pass on the same respect. Every winter teaches us that life is fragile, but our people endure because we carry one another's stories." Silent Hawk takes a deep breath. "I understand." Grandmother nods. "Good." Loss reminds us of responsibility. It makes us look inward and outward at the same time. Back at their lodge, the family sits quietly. Willow Cricket leans against Mother. Father stirs the fire with a long stick, lifting the flames just enough to warm them. No one rushes to continue chores, though everyone knows there is work waiting. Finally, Father speaks. "We will give the family time. Later, we will help gather wood for them." Silent Hawk nods. Helping others is part of their way of life, especially now. As the day passes, the valley slowly fills with movement again. Families resume building their lodges, reinforcing the walls, arranging their belongings, preparing for the deep winter ahead. Grief does not stop survival. Instead, it moves alongside it. Silent Hawk helps tighten the outer height of their lodge with new energy, not because he wants to distract himself, but because he understands now why preparation matters so deeply. Stone Willow's journey ended here, but the winter is still coming for everyone else. Grandmother watches him as he works. "You're learning quickly," she says. Silent Hawk ties another knot and checks it twice. "We can't take any chances." "No," she agrees. "We cannot." By evening, the glow of the fire reflects off the lodge walls. The valley is quiet again, but the quiet feels different from the morning's gathering. It feels steady, like the people have accepted their loss and are continuing forward together. Silent Hawk lies in his bedding that night, listening to the fire crackle softly. He thinks of Stone Willow, of the stories he told, of the way he laughed with the younger children, and he makes a promise silently to himself. He will remember those stories. He will carry them into the winter ahead. The morning after Stone Willow's ceremony arrives with a stillness that feels heavier than usual. The valley is quiet, the air cold but steady. Silent Hawk wakes to the sound of Father preparing tools beside the fire pit. Mother is already organizing the hides that will be used to reinforce the lodge. "We have much to do today," Father says. The Silent Hawk sits up. Heavy snow is coming. The ridges to the north are getting darker. Silent Hawk glances upward through the smoke hole. The sky carries a faint gray tinta kind that promises a storm even before clouds gather. Willow Cricket rubs his eyes as he wakes and begins pulling on his outer leggings without being told. Even he understands the urgency now. Grandmother sips a warm broth and slowly rises, leaning lightly on Silent Hawk's arm for support. "Today we strengthen everything," she says. "Walls, bedding, food stores, and the fire pit." Silent Hawk helps her outside, where cold air flows around them like a slow-moving stream. Other families are already up and working. Some gather snow and pack it against the base of their lodges. Others reinforce their smoke flaps. Children carry small bundles of grass, running between adults with surprising speed. The valley feels like a hive, busy, focused, and ready. Father gathers the family. "First, we seal the lodge walls." Silent Hawk, "Help me with the bottom edges." Willow Cricket, Stay with your mother and grandmother. They'll prepare the inside. Silent Hawk takes a flat wooden tool shaped like a paddle and kneels beside the lodge wall. Father begins packing snow along the bottom edge of the outer hide, pressing it firmly. Silent Hawk watches for a moment before copying the motion. The snow sticks easily in the cold, creating a thick barrier that prevents wind from sneaking underneath. This snow? Silent Hawk asks. It really keeps heat in? Father nods. Snow traps air. Air slows the cold. This is one of the strongest walls we can make. Silent Hawk pushes another layer of snow into place. And it doesn't melt, not when winter holds the ground like this, Father says. It becomes like hard stone. Together, they move around the lodge, sealing every gap. Grandmother watches silently from the entrance, occasionally pointing out spots where the snow layer is too thin or uneven. When they finish, the base of the lodge is completely surrounded by a smooth, white wall. Silent Hawk stands, brushing snow from his gloves. What next? He asks. Father looks toward the trees. Firewood. More than yesterday. We need enough for the entire valley. Silent Hawk follows him into the forest. The snow is deeper here, and the shade makes the cold sharper. Their breath thickens in the air. Father tests each fallen tree limb with his boot, choosing only the driest pieces. They gather armfuls of wood, breaking off smaller branches and tying them together with hide cords. Silent Hawk carries a large bundle on his shoulder. His steps sink into the snow, but the steady rhythm of work keeps him warm. On the way back, they pass Strong Oak, who is helping another family move a large trunk. His voice is calm but firm. Heavy storm is coming from the north. We must finish before night. Silent Hawk glances in that direction. The sky has darkened more clearly now. It's not a fast-moving storm, but a slow, heavy one-day kind that settles in and stays for days. When they return to the lodge, Mother is tightening the inner lining while Willow Cricket stuffs Cattail fluff into small gaps near the edges. Grandmother sits near the fire pit, preparing a mixture of ash and water. What is that for? Silent Hawk asks. To seal small cracks in the fire pit stones, Grandmother says. If heat escapes downward, we lose warmth upward. Every bit. Mattis. Silent Hawk kneels beside her and watches. She spreads the mixture along the stones, smoothing it with a bone tool. Onsate. Thrice. The cracks will close. Mother inspects the bedding. Tonight we sleep with extra layers, she says. The storm will push cold into every part of the valley. Willow Cricket groans softly, but continues working. Next, they prepare the food stores. Father brings a woven basket filled with dried meat, berries, and roots. They store the food in a dugout space inside the lodge, keeping it cool, but protected from freezing solid. Grandmother checks each bundle carefully. If the storm lasts, we won't be able to open our lodge easily. For a day or two, she says, we must keep everything within reach. Silent Hawk helps Mother tie the food bundles securely. He remembers how cold his hands felt on the journey and works faster. By midday, the storm clouds reach the valley. The wind begins to move in slow, heavy waves. Snow falls in thin flurries at first. People hurry as they finish the last tasks, tying down smoke flaps, checking dog harnesses, reinforcing outer walls. Inside their lodge, the fire burns steadily. Grandmother adjusts the smoke hole flaps carefully. Two open, and wind steals heat. Two closed, and smoke fills the lodge. Silent Hawk watches closely. She has been doing this for decades, yet she still checks every detail. Father brings in the last of the snow for melting. Everyone inside, he says. The storm is close. Willow Cricket crawls into his bedding. I hope it's not like the night on the open ground, he murmurs. It won't be, Mother assures him. Our walls are strong here. Silent Hawk sits near the fire, feeling its warmth spread slowly through his legs. The lodge feels tight and solid, the double walls stuffed with grass and insulated with thick snow along the base. Even as wind begins to push against the outer hide, the inside stays steady. The storm arrives soon after. It begins with heavy wind sweeping across the valley. The lodge walls shake gently at first, then firmly. Snow presses against the outer hide in thick waves. The sound is constant, a deep, steady rush. Willow Cricket pulls the furs over his head. It sounds like the sky is falling. Silent Hawk listens carefully. The wind is strong, but the lodge doesn't bend dangerously. The grass insulation muffles the worst of it. The snow packed around the base blocks. The drafts. We built this well, Silent Hawk says quietly. Grandmother nods, her eyes reflecting the firelight. This is why we prepare early. Winter gives warnings. We listened. As hours pass, the storm grows heavier. The sky outside turns completely white. The wind hits the lodge in long, powerful gusts. But the fire continues burning. The air inside stays warm, and the family settles close together. Father checks the walls from time to time. Nothing is shifting, he says. Everything is holding. Silent Hawk feels a deep sense of accomplishment, something he hasn't felt before. He helped choose insulation, pack snow, reinforce hides. His hands built part of this protection. They sit through the storm together, the lodge solid around them like a steady heartbeat. The worst cold of the season tests their home, but nothing breaks. Nothing gives. When night falls, the family settles into their bedding. Willow Cricket relaxes for the first time since the wind began. Silent Hawk lies down and listens, not with fear, but with awareness. The storm outside is loud, but inside there is calm. They prepared well. They worked together, and this shelter they built with their own hands is strong enough to face the winter. Silent Hawk wakes before sunrise, not because the cold forces him up, but because the storm has quieted. The lodge feels different this morning, still cold, but calm. The wind outside, which had pushed hard against the walls all night, has settled into a gentle whisper. The fire has burned down to steady coals, and a faint orange glow gives the lodge a soft warmth. He sits up slowly, careful not to wake Willow Cricket, who is curled deep beneath the furs. Grandmother is awake already. She sits upright with her hands folded, listening to the air, the way she always does at the start of a new day. Father lifts the flap and steps outside for a moment. Cold air sweeps in briefly, then vanishes as he lowers it again. His face shows both surprise and relief. The storm stopped sooner than expected, he says. It left a thick blanket over the valley, but the air is steady. Today, we begin the real work of winter living. Mother nods and begins rolling up the sleeping furs. The familiar routine brings a quiet comfort movement. Purpose. Order. Silent Hawk reaches for his leggings and ties them securely. Willow Cricket mutters something and burrows deeper into his bedding until Mother taps his shoulder firmly. Up, she says. You'll warm faster if you get moving. Grandmother leans on Silent Hawk's arm as the family steps outside. The valley looks transformed. Overnight, the storm dropped what looks like a season's worth of snow. The ground is smooth, untouched, and bright. Snow drapes over the pine branches and gathers in thick layers along the ridges, forming soft curves that catch the morning light. Silent Hawk breathes in the sharp, cold air. Even his breath feels cleaner, as if the storm washed the valley. Other families begin emerging from their lodge. People check their smoke flaps, brush snow away from their entrances, and talk quietly. The sense of worry that filled the valley before the storm has shifted. Now there is determination, maybe even a little hope. Father gestures toward the ridge. We'll start by checking the snow wall around the lodge. If the storm packed it too tightly, we need to loosen parts of it. Silent Hawk kneels beside him and taps the snow with the flat wooden tool. The snow is firm, but not frozen solid. Father nods. Good. It'll hold. They walk around the lodge, checking every edge. The snow has formed a thick, even barrier, a strong shield against the wind. Willow Cricket follows behind, dragging a stick and making lines in the snow. Once the inspection is done, Father moves toward the fire pit outside. We need a proper outdoor fire, he says. The animals won't stay warm on their own. Silent Hawk helps gather branches from the nearest pine trees. The lower branches, shielded from the storm, remain mostly dry. They break icily in their hands. Together, the family builds a small but steady fire. Willow Cricket sits near it, rubbing his hands. Everything looks different today. Silent Hawk nods. The valley feels quieter. Grandmother joins them and says, when a storm passes, it leaves a message. If the snow settles evenly and the wind sleeps afterward, it means the land accepts us. Silent Hawk thinks about her words. The valley does feel welcoming now, in a way it didn't before the storm, as if its harsh test had been passed. Strong Oak walks by, inspecting lodges. As he goes, he pauses near their fire. Your wall's held, he says. That's good. Some families will need help clearing entrances. Father stands and nods. Silent Hawk and I will help. They follow Strong Oak through the valley. A few lodges are partially buried, where snowdrifts piled too high. Silent Hawk helps dig out entrances, using wooden shovels. The work warms him quickly. People thank him as he passes, and each time he lifts another scoop of snow, he feels more connected to the valley. This place is theirs now. After an hour of work, the village gathers near the river. The river still runs beneath a thin crust of ice, steam rising faintly from its surface. Eldest tests the edge carefully, and after a moment, Strong Oak steps forward. This water will carry us through the worst of winter, he announces. As long as the ice doesn't thicken too fast, we can gather it easily. Grandmother smiles faintly. A good sign, she murmurs. Silent Hawk kneels by the riverbank, filling a small hide container with cold water. His reflection wavers beneath the surface. He sees himself stronger, older than he felt weeks ago. Near him, Willow Cricket tries to scoop water, but the cold stings his fingers. He hisses sharply and pulls back. Mother wraps his hands gently. Let your brother fill it. Silent Hawk fills Cricket's pouch as well, handing it to him with a small smile. Cricket's face brightens. They return to the lodge with fresh water and begin preparing a morning meal of dried meat softened in a warm broth. The fire inside the lodge burns steadily, and the space fills with a soft, earthy smell. Father sits down and stretches his legs. Today we set traps near the tree line, he says. We need to learn what animals are moving after the storm. Silent Hawk sits straighter. Can I come? You're ready, Father replies. But listen carefully the entire time. Fresh snow hides sound, and animals notice every movement. Grandmother nods approvingly. Let him go. The land teaches differently after a storm. So Silent Hawk follows Father into the forest, the snow crunching beneath their feet. The world feels new, silent, bright, and full of tracks. Rabbits, deer, a fox. All their footprints appear clearly in the untouched snow. Father kneels beside a cluster of tracks. Look at this, he says. A deer passed here recently. Fresh, not far ahead. Silent Hawk examines the prints, the snow pushed outward at the edges, not melted or refrozen. He feels a spark of excitement. Their winter food depends on understanding these signs. They set several traps, simple loops made from sinew hidden carefully among brush and fallen logs. Silent Hawk mimics Father's movements, adjusting small branches to conceal the traps without disturbing the area too much. Once the traps are placed, they walk deeper into the trees. The quiet is complete, broken only by the sound of their steps. Father stops at a wide clearing with a fallen log. This is a good place, he says. We watch from here. Silent Hawk sits beside him. The cold doesn't feel harsh right now. The valley's shelter is real, and the trees block most of the wind. For a long time, they sit in stillness, watching the snow-covered land in front of them. Silent Hawk notices small movements, the twitch of a branch, the way snow falls from the beak of a bird pecking at the bark, the shifting air above the riverbank. Winter teaches patience, Father says quietly. Silent Hawk nods. For the first time, he feels that patience not as something forced, but something that comes naturally. When they return to the lodge, the sun has risen high enough to warm the valley slightly. Willow Cricket runs to greet them. Did you see anything? He asks. Tracks, Silent Hawk says. Fresh ones. Grandmother smiles at him. Then the valley accepts you. Silent Hawk sits beside the fire and feels something deep and steady inside Hema. Sense of belonging, capability, and responsibility. They survived the storm. Their lodge held. The valley has begun to reveal its rhythms. For the first time since the early cold arrived, Silent Hawk truly believes they can endure the winter ahead. Not just survive it, understand Italiano. Live with Italiano. The valley settles into a calm rhythm in the days after the storm. Snow still lies deep across the ground, but the cold no longer feels like a threat hovering over the village. Instead, it has become something familiar, strong, unchanging, and manageable. The people adapt to it with confidence, born from preparation and unity. Silent Hawk begins waking early each morning, following father to check the traps along the tree line. The air bites at his cheeks, but he no longer flinches from it. He has learned how to wrap his hood properly, how to walk quietly over packed snow, and how to read the smallest disturbances left by animals. So May mornings they return with rabbits. Other days, the traps are empty. But each trip teaches Silent Hawk something new. How to track movement through fresh snowfall, how to spot broken twigs, how to distinguish between the prints of foxes and deer. One morning, after a light snowfall, father stops him near a cluster of pine trees. "You're learning fast," he says. "Winter teaches those who pay attention. You pay attention." Silent Hawk feels warmth rise in his chest, different from the warmth of the fire. A warmer pride. Inside the lodge, life has taken on a steady pattern. Mother checks food stores each day, rotating bundles so none freeze too solid. Grandmother dries herbs near the fire, their scent filling the lodge with a sharp, comforting smell. Willow Cricket has found his own small jobs collecting firewood, sweeping snow from the entrance, feeding the dogs scraps from meals. Grandmother watches him once and says, "Good. Every person has a place in winter." Cricket beams for a full hour afterward. The valley itself feels different now. What once seemed vast and uncertain has become a home shaped by winter's rules. Children play in the snow near the river, their laughter echoing softly. Dogs stretch in the weak sunlight. Elders sit near their lodge entrances, carving, weaving, or simply breathing the cold air with respect. Silent Hawk often finds himself standing on the ridge above the valley. From there, he can see every lodge, every trail packed down by footsteps, every curl of smoke rising from the roofs. The ridges that once signaled danger now look like protective arms around the camp. He feels something he didn't expect: gratitude. For the valley, for the cold, for the lessons forced upon them. One evening, as Silent Hawk and father walk back from checking the traps, the sky begins to darken with the blue of early winter dusk. The moon rises above the ridge, pale and round. Father pauses and looks across the valley. "We came here just in time," he says quietly. "If we had waited 2 more days, the storm would have caught us on the open plains." Silent Hawk nods. He can still feel the memory of that freezing night without a shelter. It seems far away now, like something that happened to someone else. "We were lucky," Silent Hawk says. Father shakes his head. "Luck helps, but survival comes from the work we did together, from listening to the land, from preparing before winter arrived." He meets Silent Hawk's eyes, from people learning when it is their turn to grow. Silent Hawk understands the meaning behind the words. He has changed. The winter forced him to. That night, as the family gathers around their fire, Grandmother begins telling a story, one she has told many times over the years. "It was long ago, before many of you were born," she begins. "A winter came early, just like this one. Snow covered the land before the leaves fell, and our people had to move quickly, working as one." Silent Hawk listens differently this time. He no longer hears it as a story about other people. He hears it as a story he has lived. Grandmother's voice continues, steady and warm. Those who survived did so because they respected the cold, prepared wisely, and trusted each other. Winter tested them as it tests us now, and still we are here. She looks around the lodge, her gaze soft but firm. Winter does not decide who survives. People do. Silent Hawk glances at Willow Cricket, who is staring into the fire with wide eyes. One day, his brother will tell this story, to adding his own memories, his own understanding. The fire crackles gently, casting orange reflections across the hide walls. Snow drifts softly outside, but it no longer brings fear. The lodge is warm. The valley is strong. The people are together. As Silent Hawk settles into his bedding, he thinks about the road they traveled, the storm they survived, the elder they honored, and the future that still lies ahead. Winter is far from over. More cold, more storms, and more challenges will come. But now he knows something he didn't know weeks ago. Winter is not the enemy. It is a teacher, a hard one but fair to those who listen. Silent Hawk closes his eyes, feeling the warmth of the fire fade into the steady comfort of the furs around him. Tomorrow will bring new tasks, new lessons, and new signs from the land. But tonight, the valley is quiet. The lodge is strong, the family is safe, and the story of their survival, the story they live together, will guide the winters to come. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this winter journey. Stories like this remind us that human strength is not always found in battles or victories, but in preparation, cooperation, patience, and the quiet courage to keep moving forward even when the world around us turns cold. If this story helped you relax, or if you simply enjoyed learning how early peoples survived the harshest winters on Earth, please consider subscribing. Your support helps keep this channel warm through many stories ahead. If you're already drifting off to sleep, I wish you peaceful dreams. If you're still awake, there are many more stories waiting for you on the channel. Thank you for watching and good night.